Ashley. I'm an alcoholic. I'm from Trumbull County, Ohio, and I have 5.5 years in recovery. Today I am a professional, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I get to be a girlfriend, and I get to be present today.
Ashley, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come here at On the Road to Recovery here at the Phoenix House in Stark County. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys having me. It's a privilege to be able to be asked to do these things today.
So I'd like to start at the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, whether you experienced some trauma, what your family life was like, those kind of things?
Sure. So I remember when I first started going to treatment, and they would ask that question, like, what was your childhood like? And I was like, my childhood was great. It was fine. Until I started to dig a little bit deeper, because we don't know what trauma really is until somebody tells us it's trauma, or at least I didn't. And so once I started to work through some of those things, I realized that, my dad was very physically abusive towards my mother. I was the oldest of 4 kids. So I really took on this responsible parent role for my younger siblings. And I also became my mom's friend instead of a child, because I kind of had to help her through these things. So that was one big major part of my childhood that I remember as an adverse effect. But my mom was kick-ass. She's a superhero. She is amazing. And she ended up leaving my dad when we were 12, or when I was 12. And she worked 3 jobs. She was a single mom. She made sure we never, didn't have food and water and clothes and all of those things. And she also made sure we had everything that we wanted. So I don't think my childhood was bad. I think that there were things that I had to learn from and grow up a little bit too fast. But I think that they all made me who I am today, and grateful, for the things that I can overcome today, because I think that they all play a part in it. So, but I was a baby trying to raise a baby at 16. And I had, family support. My mom, like I said, was so supportive. I had grandparents who supported me. But at the end of the day, those were years of my childhood that I didn't really get to experience. So.
Okay, can you share a little bit about what your first use was like, and what did it do for you?
There was this huge group of us that were all experimenting, I guess, at that point. And I remember we were smoking weed around the fire and drinking one night, and somebody pulled out pain pills. And I was so naive. My dad is an addict, but I was never educated on any of this stuff. Even as someone being in nursing school, I didn't understand physical addiction, withdrawal, any of those things. So I took this pill, completely naive to what I was doing, and I remember thinking this is it. I've been missing this my whole life. And it wasn't, I know that sounds so cliche, but it was more I finally felt relaxed and comfortable in my own skin, and all of the stresses of everyday life kind of weren't so heavy anymore. I didn't know it at the time because I was so young, but suffering from depression and generalized anxiety disorder. I also have OCD tendencies. So my mind's constantly spinning in circles all the time. And I just think that that's normal, and everyone's head does that.
You share a funny and or tragic story that highlights your use.
I remember finding out I was pregnant with my middle daughter. She's 7 now, but when I found out I was pregnant, I was in sober living and dating somebody who was also very new in recovery. And I thought she was going to be the answer to all of this. I was going to stay sober because I was pregnant and all of these things. And the stress of finding all of that out and knowing that I had no way or means to take care of this child, and I already had one who I couldn't take care of. I think the stress was too much, and honestly, within a couple weeks of finding out I was pregnant, I was using again, right back into the cycle of it, and ended up homeless. I was in Florida. I lived in Florida at the time. I went down there for geographical cure, and for most of my pregnancy, I was sleeping and showering on the beach. I had nowhere to stay, nowhere to live. I was taking comforters out of my car. to sleep on the beach. And I guess I'll like incorporate that into funny because it's funny now, or ironic, I guess. But I had my car at the time, and I was living out of it basically. But one day I had no money for drugs or to get high that day, and so I pawned my car, which was ironic because it's the only place I had to sleep or keep any of my stuff in. And so I pawned my car for $300, and that was all that mattered at the time. Looking back now, it's funny, like, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? But sad.
Can you talk a little bit about your mental, physical, and spiritual health while you were using?
I guess mentally, I was so like unaware of like mental health and what that was. It wasn't like a topic of conversation growing up. So I can say looking back that like while I was using, it was only getting worse. I was trying to self-medicate a mental illness that I didn't know I had. But at the end of the day, I was making it so hard. I was so depressed. And one of my like main objectives in life is to be a good mom, and I really think it was even then, and that's why I was lying and trying to figure out ways around it, so that I could still have my children, because I had this like longing and love for them, and I wanted to be able to be a good mom. But when Gianna was taken from me straight from the hospital, and I kind of had this realization of like, I'm not capable of being a mom or anything else today. I remember explaining it like, and this I guess can tie into like my spiritual health at the time, looking in the mirror and like not seeing anything behind my eyes, like this empty shell, like only black. There was no light on anymore, and like I really felt like there was nothing inside of me, like internally. I didn't grow up with the conception of God. Didn't even know if I believed in God, but at that point in my addiction, like I knew I believed in the devil, and I really had thought like I sold my soul to him and there was no getting it back. I think when I was there at the very end of my using and addiction is when I like gave up. Like I was no longer interested in like going back to treatment, trying again, trying to get my kids back. I had come to the point where I was like, felt like my kids were better off without me, and so I was just going to leave it at that and continue to use until I died.
Did you ever have any legal consequences?
Yeah, I did. So I picked up a couple misdemeanor theft charges. My hustle, I guess you want to call it, is I would like steal. So my dad actually taught me that like the corner stores would buy like grocery produce stuff like pop and Red Bull and things like that were expensive for them to buy. So I would actually like go into the grocery stores and like wheel out carts of like Red Bull and Pepsi and stuff and then sell it to them. So anyway, I picked up a couple of misdemeanor theft charges along the way. And then the last day of my using, actually, I caught a felony charge. So I went to jail on felonious assault, fleeing and eluding, and aggravated robbery were the charges that I went to jail on that day. It's the last day I ever used. I also overdosed that day. I had kind of been on, it was right after my daughter got taken, and I was on just, I honestly think I was on a suicide mission. Not even with the intentions to die, but not caring if I did. And so I overdosed that day. And me and my kid's dad went and met this guy that we knew, and tried to sell him gift cards with no money on them. I was just driving, but I take full responsibility for my part in that. And when he took the money and got back in the car, I drove away, and he was like beside the car trying to stop us, and I hit him with the car when I tried to pull away. So
what happened when you decided to get help?
So I've been to treatment 10 times throughout this journey of trying to get sober, and I do believe that like I really was trying. I was fighting for my life, because treatment's not fun. You know, we don't go to treatment because it's fun. So I went in and out. Seeds were planted. I could see, or at least got a glimpse of like what the other side was going to look like, but I just never felt like I could quite reach it. This time I didn't necessarily get help. I went to prison. But because I had been through treatment, been to AA, exposed to all of these things, I kind of had an idea of what I was supposed to do. And so when I went to jail and then prison, I had no intentions on getting and staying sober. I had a spiritual experience that to this day I still can't like explain. I don't try to understand. But I remember walking to the bathroom, and it was like this long like corridor of like bunk beds. There's no doors on the bathroom, obviously, so it's just this big open space, but there's like mirrors all around. And I remember like using the bathroom like normal, getting up, going to like wash my hands, and looking up in the mirror and seeing myself for the first time. Like in comparison to the end of my addiction, when all I could see was black and an empty shell, I could see light in my eyes. And I just remember thinking to myself, out of nowhere, like, I may not deserve my kids, but my kids deserve a mom. And something inside me changed that day. I don't know what. I can't tell you the exact day or like if there was anything going on. All I know is I was going to try to do something different, and I couldn't keep feeling the way I was feeling. I was sleeping like 23 hours a day, doing nothing with my time. Really thought like if I make it through this experience in prison, I'm going to go home and pick back up where I left off. But something changed in me that day, and so I signed up for this program called the military prep program, which like I don't like to exercise. Okay, I'm not a person who likes mornings still to this day, but everyone kept saying like discipline and structure, and I felt like I had lacked that in my life for so long. So I figured try it, and what's the worst that's gonna happen? You know, I'm in prison, can't get much worse. And so I signed up for this program, and I was running 3 to 5 miles every morning, waking up at 4 a.m. But I had to like adhere to like meal plans and be in step with my drill instructor, and they really implemented like some military basics into there with like discipline and structure. And that program changed my life. It changed my life. It gave me the ability in prison to be exposed to recovery services, which I didn't qualify for because of my sentence term, because it was 4 years. So the way that they do it in prison is you can do recovery stuff before you leave. Like, but you can't do it while you're there. So no time to like implement and practice these things. Just kind of like, here it is, now go to the real world and test it. But because of this military program, I got to be exposed to these things. We kind of had like special privileges. And I also got to start the first recovery meeting on the farm. We called it the farm. I was in Marysville. For general population because there weren't any. And so I helped start that with recovery services, and it was really cool. And recovery is few and far between there. I knew that like I needed a mentor, somebody to help me through these steps, but there just wasn't. It wasn't there. So I started going to a Bible study, which, like I said before, didn't know if I believed in God. All I know, it was the opportunity that was presented to me, and I worked my steps the first time through the Life Recovery Bible.
So what does your recovery look like today?
My recovery today is not about not using and drinking. My recovery today is about how can I be the best person that I can be? How can I be a good mom? How can I be more tolerant and patient and a better daughter? And how can I help other people to change their perspectives on things? So my recovery today really is about like, how do I just be good? You know, I want to be good. I was a bad person for so long. Bad to my mom, bad to my siblings, bad to my kids. So today I just try. I fail all the time. You know, I'm human. But I work really hard at just trying to make sure I can lay my head down on the pillow at night and like go to sleep, because I was incapable of that before. Because all that went through my head was all of the shitty things that I did throughout the day.
Can you share any stigmas that you faced while in recovery? So from family, friends, communities, employment, or healthcare?
Sure. I think I face stigmas differently at different stages of my recovery, if that makes sense. So when I first came home from prison, I remember my mom told me that everyone warned her, like, don't get your hopes up. She might come home and do the same thing, and they actually told her that I probably would. So my family was reluctant, you know. I wanted to see my kids first thing, and my mom was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And so I really had to just like take it slow and respect my family and how they wanted to do this and reintroduce. And I had to stop talking about what I was doing and show them in my actions. But I remember I think I was like almost 4 years sober at the time, and I told my mom I wanted to take a vacation with my friends to Florida, and it turned into this huge fight. And then at the end of it, once we were both like not angry anymore, like she cried and she's like, I'm so scared. Like I can't ever picture you going back to Florida alone down there. And I remember telling her like, Mom, I have 4 years sober. Like it's not even a thought. And she's like, I don't care. For the rest of my life, it was trauma to her. But so that's still there for her, stigmas. Like I remember we went on vacation in Tennessee and like everyone disappeared, and I'm like, where is everyone at? Well, I'm the only black sheep in my family, or the only addict anyway, the only one who can't drink like a normal human being, right? So I like went downstairs and they're all like sneaking drinking so that they don't have to do it in front of me, which I appreciate and respect. But I told them, I'm like, my sobriety, your life should not be affected by my sobriety. You shouldn't have to tiptoe around me.
How has your recovery helped to heal the relationships damaged?
Wow. My life today is so beautiful. The relationships with my family is one of the most important things that I have in my life. I give leads a lot for AA, and I always, want to go up there and say like, yeah, I financed my first car and I have a house and I pay my bills today. But in all reality, like none of that material stuff matters. Like these relationships that I've rebuilt with my family, that's what keeps me sober still every single day. I didn't speak to my mom for a long time. She would call and check on me, but I remember like not being invited to Thanksgiving and not understanding why. Like, why wouldn't I be invited? Well, probably because I was stealing everybody's stuff when I would go to their house, But today, like, my mom lives 5 minutes up the street, and I'm allowed to like drop into her house whenever I want to, which is strange because like before the doors would be locked to make sure I couldn't get in, and now I can just walk in her front door, and they leave money on the refrigerator, like clipped to this magnet. I don't know why. But every time I go in there, like I glance at it, like they're going to leave this out. It's been 5.5 years, but they're all starting to, or should I say they've learned to trust me again. And it's beautiful. My sister, who is 10 years younger than me, has 2 children, and she was pregnant with her first child when I was in prison. And she was one of the only ones who kept in constant contact with me while I was gone. And she would like J-pay me, like message me, like emails. They're like emails. And I remember one email, her telling me like, if you come home and you relapse again, like you will not be a part of this child's life. And I was so sad because I wanted to be there for my baby sister, and I came home and I got to meet my niece, and I was just reading on Facebook, she did the questionnaire with her daughter. She's 4 now. And they said like, who's your best friend? And my niece, her name's Violet, she said Auntie. And I have that, and she just had another child. It's my nephew, my first nephew, first boy in our family in a long time. And I remember when I first came home with my niece, my sister, was very like, you can't take her overnight, and like she had to like be around and watch me, and I don't blame her, but like now she's like, hey, can you come take my kids? And it's beautiful because I get to help her today. She doesn't have to be, I get to be that big sister. I have 2 brothers who do not believe in the disease aspect of addiction, but that's okay. They're entitled to their, how they feel and their opinions. And I'm not mad at them for that, but for a very long time, they would not speak to me at all. And now me and my little brother play on a softball team together, and he comes over and plays PlayStation with my oldest daughter, who all 3 of my kids live with me today. So my 17-year-old, my first one, is now 17, and that was one of the hardest relationships I had to rebuild. She got to a point with me where she kind of wrote me off, and decided that like I wasn't capable of being her mom, and she was going to be okay with that. So she was really slow to warming up to me. The first full Christmas that I was home, so I was probably home a little over a year at the time. Her Christmas gift to me was telling me she loved me for the first time in 4 years. And then at the end of this school year, she asked me if she could come move in with me for her senior year. So she's there, and now I get to have her every day and all the time. And being a mom is difficult, but it's what I prayed for every single day on my prison bunk. Is I just want to be able to be a mom to my kids, a daughter to my mom, a sister to my siblings.
What dreams do you have for your future?
Oh, I'm honestly super content with life right now, but I'm always going to reach for the stars. So right now I'm in a grad school for my master's degree in social work. My maybe pipe dream is to open up my own treatment center one day and to be the director of it. So, but if I don't, that's okay, right? So God is going to lead me where I need to be. But I just want to continue to like teach my kids all of the things that I lacked growing up, so that it's okay to fail, that you know, it's okay to not be perfect, that there are going to be things that we try that we're not good at, and that there are going to be mean people, and we're going to come across people that don't like us and people that we don't like, and that's okay, because their attention and validation is not what's going to make us happy in life. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing for right now, and keep praying and letting God guide me where I'm supposed to be, and hopefully one day have that treatment center.
Share some inspiration and hope for those who are still struggling with addiction.
If you're still struggling with addiction, just know that there is another way, and that if you've tried 100 times before, like, keep trying, because that next time might be the time that something clicks and you get it. And also, like, don't be afraid to take suggestions from other people. Stay open-minded and just, you know, take the advice from the people who came before you, because that was something that was really hard for me to do.
Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come join us here at the Phoenix House in Stark County and sharing some inspiration and hope for those who still need it most. Your story will help to spread awareness, humanize addiction, end stigma, and inspire hope one story at a time.
I hope so.